At this stage, we have to talk about whether transparency actually does pay, which I believe we all agree on. It's a message that is not necessarily self-evident for people who come from outside the field. As I was saying to the mayor earlier, I think people still assume that sustainability is a cost rather than something that you can make money on. Why don't we just go into what you guys want to talk about? Colin, do you want to start, or?
Yeah, sure. So, I believe that disclosure drives measurement. Then you have data, you have insights, and then you drive better decisions, right? And take action. So for me, that's where it all lands, right? We have to take action. ACT ACT, right? So we need to act on it. If you know ACT, you probably know as a sourcer of certificates for Scope 1 and 2, your renewable power, your biofuels, your carbon. What you may not know is we've developed digital solutions to help with supply chain decarbonization. And that starts with, first of all, driving supplier engagement to actually measure activity-based carbon footprinting at the supplier level. And that leads to better data quality, because if you do it just by spend-based estimation, you can be very, very wrong. You can be wrong 5x. Now, do you want to take action on something that's wrong by 5x, or would you rather have the right quality of data to drive the right action? And then we've also built a decarbonization platform, a digital platform, so people can just click to decarbonize. I think it's important to make taking action easy. Right, so sustainability shouldn't be a challenge. It shouldn't be a problem for you. It should be the right thing to do and making it easy. And I think when you then get into it, when you have all that data and insights, you see that there's actually money to be made. Last year I was at New York Climate Week, and a senior guy from IKEA said, "Why do people keep talking about this as a cost and a problem? It's just good business." And IKEA, they've been doing it for 20 years. It just make things cheaper, make things better. And that drives better business, right? And I think there's many things you can do that just save you money, right? So when you got the insights, hey, energy efficiency, electrification, on-site generation investments, these all make sense, right? They all have good paybacks. As big companies, you've probably already been doing that, but the many millions of smaller companies maybe have not. Of course, you can avoid compliance costs, right? But if you get deeper, you can start to understand resilience. So are you maybe extremely exposed to one part of the world, Canadian forests, right? Is that a worry? It also drives insurance costs. Yeah?
These kinds of subjects were some of the things that came up yesterday at the CSO roundtable a lot, particularly the extreme complexity of reporting requirements, the amount of the number of data points that you need to report. Information solutions sound like they can make that easier. Ulrika, you were saying that I think 1% of your costs are tier 1, the rest is all your suppliers, and that sounds very complicated to deal with.
Yeah, and still, so 1% of our emissions, roughly Scope 1 and 2, and the rest is Scope 3. And still, I would say that the major time we spend reporting on Scope 1 and 2, and that's obviously something that we need to should be looked into. But still, with all this time, I would say that yes, reporting pays out. And why? I mean, then we need to go back and look into why do we even have sustainability activities. It is to make sure, hopefully, that we have a company that is resilient and future-proof. And so it's not the reporting itself that drives bottom line, of course, but it's the reason that we, in order to report, we need to go in and do a risk evaluation of what's actually happening in our company, and also make sure that we quantify this risk. And to do so, we need to involve the whole organization. That's not just one single person that can do that. And that means that as a company, you have a better awareness of where you stand and also can do better decisions. And how does that then affect the bottom line? Yeah, mainly, we might think of this, or to go back and look at what the CSRD reporting is all about. It's double materiality. What does that mean? We need to look into how do we as a company affect the environment, but how does the environment affect us as a company with risks and corporate value, both what we could have as future costs, but also opportunities. Mm-hmm. And in order to, what you mostly think about maybe is that in a good ESG rating, you would be a better fit for an investor because you're risk minimized. That could bring lower cost of capital, and that obviously have a direct effect on your profit and loss. But it's also about knowing what costs to avoid as a company. We're a fashion retailer. Clothes needs to be, as an example, they need to be dyed in a process. If we can support and that dyeing process takes a lot of chemicals, water, and energy. If we can support our suppliers with changing that technology, of course, they will be operational cost efficient in the future, which will also then go back to us.
Yeah. Sherry, you had some statistics that you sent me earlier on how profitable investing in sustainability can be that make it look so profitable that you can't understand why people aren't already doing it. How do you explain that? Or do you want to run down the statistics, actually, because it'd be interesting for people to hear?
Yeah, thank you, Matt. And thanks to The Economist for inviting us here. I'm Sherry Madera, CEO of CDP. I'm amongst friends. We're delighted to have ACT as one of our partners, as well as Briink. And of course, H&M has been a disclosure for many years. Audience, who knows about CDP? We are the fantastic. I'm not sure if we're friends with everyone because we actually have a difficult platform sometimes to answer the questions on. However, I'm here to tell you it matters, and thank you. We are now 25 years old. We are the largest global platform for gathering climate and nature data across borders, across jurisdictions. We surface comparable data from over 2/3 of the world's market capitalization, over 25,000 companies in every sector. So, Matt, I will answer your question as opposed to avoiding it. The number I think that my wonderful team has crunched for me to be specific to Europe, considering that's where we are and what we're thinking about at the moment, is that European companies on average stand to gain 51.7 million euros worth of benefit per year in investing in climate opportunities. And again, that goes from some of the largest companies that are disclosing in Europe to some of the smaller ones because we work across the supply chain. As Colin said, super important not only to be able to pull up your Scope 3 emissions, but really to think about what is going on within your supply chain and being able to actually take action outside of your own control, but into that of your suppliers as well. And you might ask me, Matt, why is this not happening? And what does it cost to unlock that 51.7 million? The number says it's 7.8 million euros on that 51 million. This is per company. So we're talking about a 6.6 times gain. Why? Why are companies not investing in this? What we're seeing is that actually part of this is a journey, and a number of companies are investing in this. And when we're thinking about, let's all level set here. It's not just about new tech. It's not just about sort of a green technology revolution. It's about core business changes that may also take time and be able to need that CapEx investment. Of course, some of it's large, some of it's small. But actually, when we're thinking about what has already happened, I have some good news, which is over the course of the last 5 years in our supply chain program, which covers about $6.5 trillion worth of buying power globally, companies have actually saved $33 billion in the course of the last 5 years in acting on the data that they specifically get through their supply chain. So how is it that you make money from engaging with your supply chain? It's encouraging those in the supply chain to think differently, to employ different processes, to actually start thinking about how can you bring in a third party like a financier in order to be able to help some of the suppliers that are smaller with their CapEx, in order to be able to change simple things like energy mix. And thinking about how is it that you change old fossil fuel generating or supported factories into something that's even more renewable energy, which is cheaper in the long term. We heard that from the original panel here as well. So the opportunities are absolutely there. And I enjoy that we're speaking about opportunities because often these panels talk all about risk. And of course, the risk does need to be quantified and mitigated. And part of that can actually start revealing where within your business you can do things more differently, better, and more profitably. We should not back away from that. Planet and profit are one and the same. It's not about environmentalism, it's about economics.
So, Tomas, you're also on the data side of things to some extent, as I understand it. Is it a lot easier with modern data handling and AI to handle the kinds of regulatory requirements that are coming down?
Yeah, so I'm Tomas. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Briink, and what we do is we build AI technology for ESG and sustainability data and reporting, due diligence, supply chain workflows. And I think one of the things that we've seen is there is this sense within the industry that a lot of the regulatory work, a lot of the work that has been coming down from the Commission has been deemed to be overly complex and overly challenging. And it's also led to like a lot of the pushback that we've seen, of course, with the omnibus regulation. But I think where we see the value and the power of technology, and I don't think you can solve all this just with technology, but I do think that technology can play a critical role here in reducing the complexity, reducing the cost of intelligence within the sustainability space way down. I think one of the things that we see right now is a lot of companies just don't have the existing expertise that they've built up over years to be able to do a lot of this work. And as a result, a lot of companies say, wait, it's too complicated. I can't do this, or I don't want to do this. I don't want to look at my supply chain. I don't know how to do it because I haven't built up the expertise with my team over the last few years. And it will take me too much time to build up that expertise, and it'll cost me too much money. Where we see the role of AI is one, of course, you can provide the tooling and the technology to help these organizations, but you can also make it a lot easier for companies to become experts in ESG, in sustainability, in climate, in their industries way faster than they would have been able to do so a few years ago. And I think that's really where we see the power of technology is to say, look, why don't we use technology to democratize the intelligence within this industry and make it way more accessible for way more people? That way, we can also go and collect the data that we need, the data that, for example, CDP collects, to actually drive the transition at the pace that we need. So I think the power of technology can play many different roles here, and I think that's really where we're really just only getting started right now. And I think there's a real opportunity ahead for the companies that do invest in that right now, because it's going to set you up way more than if you were to say right now, let's hold back, let's step on the brakes here.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the omnibus bill. What is the effect on the drive for sustainability in the industry of these kinds of unexpected delays in implementation of legislation that people had already prepared for?
Maybe I can jump in and then I'll welcome the panel. I think one of the benefits of that we did see a lot with the CSRD, which was that it did, I think further to Sherry's point, it did increase awareness within a lot of companies about sustainability in the first place. I mean, I think a lot of larger companies like H&M, they've been working in this space for years, but if you look at all the, for example, we're based in Germany, if you look at the Mittelstand, a lot of private companies, it was really when the CSRD came in that they said, wait, hold on, what is this whole topic about, right? So I think that's one of the things that I would love to see not be rolled back right now because of the whole omnibus regulation, that we don't then say, let's actually stop having these companies have this awareness, because I think awareness is going to drive action and is going to drive investment. So I think I'd love to see us kind of find ways to continue to push that within organizations and not have that become something that we roll back too much.
Is that a risk that companies will respond that way?
Well, let's actually ask, why do companies surface sustainability in nature-based data, earth positive data is what we're calling it? It's actually for three reasons. One, access to capital. Your investor wants it and you want to be part of their investor universe. Second is business efficiency. Your customer is asking you, or your own business processes are demanding it. And the third is compliance. Access to capital, business efficiency, compliance. It's the ABCs. Let's not forget that. Let's keep it simple. And C is only one of them. And interestingly, it's not totally different data for the A, the B, the C. It's the same data. So let's try and figure out how it is that we can create a real efficiency in being able to surface data that is multi-use and core to the business. All of the ABCs are about a core business. It is not about CSR box ticking. And so actually we go back to the omnibus. Let's think about how many companies have been prepared for that legislation. And our data shows that 83% of companies across Europe that disclosed to CDP were already fully prepared for the CSRD as it was originally written. Now, as we're looking at sort of the omnibus as it comes through, the number of companies that are going to be required to do that goes down by 40%, or down to 40%, from 50,000 to 6,000. In some ways, we're asking the wrong questions, right? It's about what is the data going to be used for. If you make that compelling business case, actually, you don't need to have a stick. It becomes a carrot. So I think that that's the piece that I'd love to start leaning into.
Agree. Someone before said about leveling the playing field, and that I think is a good quote. And if I could have a request, it will also to be to someone, because the regulators will not do that, to find some sort of standardized valuation. That would be a request for CDP.
Heard.
To help us to put a value on it. Because just as an example, what I said earlier with the investment or support, financial support, where we see that we could be able to reduce costs for our suppliers with these type of investments in a new technology, that's a long-term investment. That will not happen tomorrow. But we want to measure the result or the efficiency already today, so that we do with internal reporting to look at some sort of value of this investment with a financial value that is then attached to the impact that you get out of that. And I think that's missing in the CSRD or the reporting today, that you don't have the connection between the impact and the financial value. Maybe something for you to look into to make sure that we all report in a standard as well when it comes to the value as well, that we can see the value.
So we have a question from Juliette, who asks, beyond climate and energy, what have been the major areas of cost savings and value creation related to environmental sustainability? And asks whether nature is an opportunity. I actually am not sure what she means by whether nature is an opportunity. So Juliette, you might want to clarify that, but maybe you guys take the point faster than I do.
So I'll tell you, nature is a $1.4 trillion opportunity, according to those that disclosed to CDP last year. So that has been the amount of opportunity specifically on nature-related topics. Water in particular is seen as being a real economic input, which is what it is, and it's mispriced. So how is it that we also come into contact with the fact that by 2030, the demand for water is going to outpace supply by 40% worldwide? That's fresh water. If we think about how that affects us in the other thing that we can't stop talking about, which is AI, AI requires data centers require energy, and they require water as well. So again, part of this is not just some ethereal nature question mark. It becomes actually, how is it that the inputs to our economic growth plans are actually being impaired, and how is it that that is going to actually affect price? And that is where actually we're surfacing some of that opportunity to do things more efficiently, and so therefore actually be able to maintain the economics that the projections say going forward.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of co-benefits when you get involved with nature. So we're doing a couple of projects right now, developing a reforestation project in the Colombian Amazon. So when you do that, first of all, you reforest, but then in with native species. But we put in pockets of acai plantations, so then you have a local economy benefit. So you're creating jobs and a lot of SDG co-benefits of doing that project. We have another one in Africa that's actually part of the Article 6, technical language, Article 6.2 under the Paris Agreement. Switzerland has no chance to make their NDCs. Ghana can overdo it, right? So we're putting together a cook stove project in Ghana, which the Swiss are paying for, basically, right? But what's the benefit of that? 120,000 households, 800,000 people inhaling less smoke, right? So there's a health benefit. There's a female benefit in terms of women are not going to have collect so much firewood and waste their days doing that. Child health, so there's an awful lot of co-benefits of doing the right thing, right?
Yeah. I thought the next question might be one for Ulrika to start with, on whether it actually pays off to help your suppliers become more sustainable, considering the average length of a supplier contract and the cost factor in picking your suppliers, and I suppose also what it costs you to invest in helping them become sustainable.
Go back to your question, was that nature, is it to invest in nature? Look at the example that I used before with the waterless dyeing. If you use that technology and support a supplier in installing this, the water usage will reduce with 70%, something like that. Energy, 70 to 80% less, and chemicals more or less the same. So if we then believe that these costs will increase in the future, then you have the answer, even if you would have a short-term contract with a supplier. But if you do this investment with a supplier, why would you swap? And that is the security also for the supplier. Because it's not, so yes, it pays off.
Yeah, it's security for the supplier. It's less. It's decreased flexibility for you.
It could be a decrease. It could, but on the other hand, I think even if contracts are shorter and maybe not, the usual part is not because of fashion changes that fast, but it's not the usual maybe to have a contract that goes over tens of years. It doesn't mean that the change is over tens of years. Why would you change supplier if it's the right supplier for you? Yeah. It says itself.
Yeah, and your industry may be one where one is most likely to change suppliers, and the network of suppliers is widest, most flexible. For your involvement in other industries, do people tend to be buying more consistently from their suppliers, so it's more obvious how your investment will pay off because you know who you're buying from?
Well, I think that we can look at the point that we haven't talked about, which is thinking about sort of what are the supply chain owners' plans? What is the supply chain owner's strategy? And if it has a sustainable business strategy going forward, then the fact is that on average, every sector in all parts of the world, the average is that your scope 3 emissions are 26 times your scope 1 and scope 2 emissions. So if actually the owner of the supply chain is saying, actually, I'm going in this direction, it is wise for them to look at their suppliers and say, how is it that we can all move in that same direction, not only in terms of good business and profitable business, but what are your targets? What are our targets? How is it that we marry those things up? And changing suppliers is not what anyone wants to do. But there are also policies in place at that supply chain owner level that says this is the level by which underneath, either by emissions, water usage, governance, target setting, whatever it happens to be, it's part of an RFP now. Yeah. So if you're below that level, you're going to have to change your supplier. You don't want to do that. So why not go and talk to them about how is it that actually we can all be in line together and that works better. So there is a inherent cost benefit for keeping that smoothness, but also making sure that you're maintaining what you need to do as a supply chain owner.
It looks like the next question was actually directed specifically to you, which is whether you guys have done an analysis of ESG corporate governance strength and progress on decarbonization.
Has CDP done an analysis of ESG corporate governance strength? Yeah, every year. So one of the things that CDP does is since 2013 we were the first to produce a score or a rating, and this reflects the transparency in those that disclose to us. And part of that is we do look at the governance strength. And one of the things that we did find beginning of this year, we did a corporate health check. And we looked at listed companies over the course of the last 5 years, who were the leaders and the laggards, and who has been rewarded through the capital markets as well. And the leaders were ones that actually linked their targets and their sustainability agenda to executive pay and governance. So again, that's one of the metrics that we have used, but every year we look at that governance piece, and it forms a part of our scoring methodology, which is fully transparent and in the public domain. So hopefully that's our way of highlighting and surfacing that.
And are those kinds of potential slaps on the wrist from your ratings just as effective as the kinds of mandatory compliance requirements that might come down from a government?
Matt, we see ratings as an encouragement.
Yes, of course.
We want to encourage those to be able to say, how is it that we can move up that chain? How is it that we can actually showcase and make sure that the talent and the employees across our network and the rest of the supply chain are excited about how that's doing? Of course, that also creates sort of shining a light on where things aren't where perhaps their peers are, or those that are best in class in an industry or in a geography, depending on how it is that you as a company want to benchmark yourself. So, for those reasons, I think it gets the attention, and I think that's a good thing.
Coming from the outside, I think there's a strong assumption that the motivating factor is consumer preferences and consumer evaluations of how well companies are performing. What I've been discovering over the last couple of days is that people are driven to a great extent by internal corporate ethics and by the evaluations of their peers. Does that sound right?
Yeah. I mean, the war for talent, young talent wants to work for a company they think is taking sustainability seriously. There are other drivers, right? If you're one of the big tech companies building all the data centers, you have to be seen to be doing something about the incremental power, right? It is not going. It cannot stress the grid further, right? So you're going to have to take that responsibility for renewable power, new renewable power on yourself, right? That's why we work with Amazon and Microsoft as their digital partner for the supply chain. And the first thing is measuring. The next thing is reducing through buying renewable power. And for them, it's almost existential, right? Because they'll lose their license to operate if they don't deal with the renewable power problem, right? Yeah. Then you have different approaches to this, right? So Microsoft's using a stick, right? Next year, if you don't report, you're not a Microsoft supplier. Amazon's using a carrot, right? Mars is just buying the renewable power. They're calculating the total renewable power usage in their supply chain and say, right, we'll just pay for the renewable power certificates ourselves. So companies taking different approaches to it.
I think also on our side, I think we see a lot of it is sort of peer benchmarking. A lot of it is looking at where the pressures are coming within your industry and your supply chain. That's why people tend to act on sustainability. It's not always like very much driven because of like regulatory compliance reasons. It's the cost of doing business in a lot of ways, right? If you are not investing in ESG or climate data, you're not investing in the infrastructure that's required to go and collect this information, you're going to be left behind just because people will increasingly expect it from you. And I think that's just the cost of doing business. So I think that's also a big reason why companies are continuing to invest in this space.
Yeah. Along the same lines, we have a question asking, how did capital markets react to CSRD adoption? I suppose meaning do companies that move faster to comply get preferential treatment in capital markets? Do you have a vision on that?
Well, I think that over 25 years, CDP has been tracking the fact that there is a benefit to disclosure and transparency. We are fully aligned with ISSB, which has done extensive research on what financial institutions and financial use case needs in order to take a decision on allocating capital. That's not only risk, it's also opportunity and transparency. And there's countless examples of the use of CDP data or CDP scores in order to gain a better cost of capital or to be included in a universe. Right. For example, we work with Amundi on some of their funds. The CDP scores become the ability to access that universe. So if we start thinking about sort of how is it that capital markets are reacting, there is already a huge list of examples. If you get really practical, and going back to my favorite topic of water, BBVA, the Spanish bank, has funded Iberdrola, the Spanish energy utility, on the basis of the CDP water score, because they need to maintain their A score for stewardship in order to get a significantly lower cost of capital, which is in service of some of the improvements and upgrades that they want to make across their system utilizing water. Yeah. So again, it's all starting to come together. And what CDP is calling this is Earth positive economics. Right? There is a ability to actually bring in this data, not because it's sitting in a silo on the sidelines, but because it's actually influencing risk and opportunity, and therefore you can price it. And we have to stop being nervous about this. if you can price these things in, that helps to move the capital. We heard on the earlier panel, all the way from private equity, all the way up to some of your largest capital allocators. And it is also moving the dial on buyers. H&M, when you're thinking about your supply chain, you're not going to put money where it is actually not going to be relevant. So this has all got to be back into Earth positive economics. And if we can do that right, I think that we're actually surfacing the information to take good decisions.
I'm going to ask the last question. Since there's such a consensus that reporting all of this information is helpful to business and is a good investment, where is the pressure on regulators coming from to delay the implementation of these rules? Does anybody know?
No.
What is going on in Brussels?
That's a good.
I mean, the Mittelstand, the small companies, of course, are pushing back, right? It's a burden. I mean, even for big companies, it's a cost. You need people. It's a burden, right? And so maybe the question is, can we get fit for purpose regulation, right? Or does it have to be too heavy? Right. Okay. So it's about getting that cost benefit right and the degree of complexity, I would say.
We talk about sector specific reports, maybe.
I shouldn't have asked this last because we're out of time. You answer anyway.
I think it ultimately comes down to, I think, what a couple of people said on the panel. I think in Brussels, they need to do a better job of building the business case. I think that was the mistake that was made up front, was they didn't build the business case with the regulation, and as a result, everybody sees it as an unnecessary compliance cost, and they don't see what the benefits are. I think that's really what needs to be worked on more so than anything else.
Great. Thanks so much. This has been incredibly stimulating.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.